You're listening to the Small and Supercharged podcast with Ria Freeman, episode 319. So today I am delighted, properly delighted. I followed you for ages, not in a stalking way, in online with Rachel Watkyn from the Tiny Box Company. It's a company that I've purchased from before, and I know I have a group on Facebook with lots of small businesses. And when anyone says, where can I get X product, X packaging product, you always come up. So it's so lovely to have you here today.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. And I'm so glad that you've bought from us.
I have. I was looking for boxes, not in, I didn't want to buy 6 million. I wanted to buy
Yeah,
a smallish quantity of something really nice that
yeah.
didn't cost me a kidney. And you were the option, actually.
Yeah, so a few competitors have moved into our space. How dare they? And do you know what they've done? They've blatantly copied all my products, copied our website, and then undercut us. The ethics are mind-blowing, but yeah, luckily we have some very loyal customers, which I'm very grateful for.
Mm. And I was obviously reading up on you generally, but this morning I was reading more about you and I'm going to really butcher this phrase now, about how that the tiny things can make a big difference and make a big impact.
Yeah.
And I love that. I know that that is more than just the company you have, that goes way back. But it really struck me that, gosh, I've got this whole thing about breaking down goals and looking at the little things that we can do, the micro things to improve the kind of marginal gains. If
Yeah.
we all really adopted that, what a different place it would be.
I think one of the things where marginal gains can really, really influence people is on their confidence levels.
Which we were
It- uh,
just talking about.
yeah, if you look at things like weight and the huge milestones people want, and actually it's okay to say, do you know what? I'm going to start really small and change my habits in micro ways, and then it compounds.
Yeah, absolutely. There is a whole thing about changing like 1% that you do every
Yeah,
day, being 1% better or doing 1% something. And actually in a few days' time, let alone in a few weeks or months, it's huge.
yeah. It's like compound interest.
That's it. That's it. You see, I knew there was a term, and actually, as we're recording this on the day of the budget, it seems good to bring up numbers. But I thought
Definitely.
there's definitely something here that I've forgotten the term. That was the one. Um, but let's start with, can you tell us about why you started the Tiny Box Company and your history to get there? Because I know you've had a really interesting, challenging, different background to get you to where you are now.
Oh, I've had such a screwed up life.
I did read it and think, oh my gosh, but also how inspirational that despite everything that's happened to you, you've got a really cool company and you do so much good. So please tell us all about it.
Do you know what? People say, oh, it's inspirational, but the problem is that it's my normal. And so much that happens to people, uh, especially in early childhood, you don't realize it's not normal.
No.
So you just get on with it. And so yeah, long story short, I was the result of an affair of my mum, who was married to someone else, and my dad married to somebody else. I was born, and it was clear that I wasn't my stepfather's because they're all very dark and I'm very blonde.
Oh,
So the inevitable happened of my mum's marriage breaking down, but the shock of the story was that when my stepfather said he didn't want to be married to her anymore, it's because he said he wanted to go and have a sex change and become a woman.
I did not read about that bit. Oh wow. So that's quite a lot, isn't it? It's a
Yeah,
lot to happen.
yeah, it was in 1971.
Yes, even
So
more so.
yeah, so fast forward to 8 months. So I'm 8 months old. We're living in Exeter. There's an accident outside the house where a man gets hit by a car. My mum goes out to help the guy that gets hit. And a couple of days later, the police come round just to get a statement. Normal procedure. They knock on the door, and instead of my mum being there, my stepfather was there in my mum's clothes and with my mum's makeup on, which, again, in 71,
Yeah.
unheard of. Um, but then apparently I was sitting on the floor. I only found this out 2 years ago when I emailed Devonshire County Council. So for anyone listening, you can years later get your social services records.
I did not know that. I didn't know anything about anything like this.
No. Um, so yeah, the police are there and I'm on the floor with no clothes on. It's December, there's no heating.
Oh,
It looks like a squat and I'm blue, like
right.
literally blue
From the cold and
from the cold. So the police made a sharp exit and returned literally a couple of hours later with social services and rushed me into hospital,
gosh.
where I stayed for 5 weeks. And the reports say that I was imminently going to lose my toes to frostbite. And had I stayed there another week, I would have lost my feet.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So it was brutal reading it. Um, but yeah, then I ended up in care, as did my two sisters, but we were in different care homes, which was all very random. And then in 1973, they thought it would be a good idea to return me to my mum and my real dad, who have since got married.
Right. Okay.
And my stepfather transitioned and became a woman in 1972.
Right.
So I was effectively returned to the three parents,
Wow.
uh, which was never going to end well because I hadn't seen my sisters for 2 years. I hadn't seen my parent, and my mum visited me once in the
Oh
home.
wow.
So I got returned to strangers. I didn't even know them.
Gosh.
Um, and yeah, it was bad. It was a lot of alcohol abuse. My mum had she'd had a complete breakdown, but of course there wasn't the support then. So by 14, sofa surfing. By 18, engaged to a Hell's Angel.
Wow.
If you're going to go off the rails, do it in style.
You're right. Yeah. Yeah.
Arrested for drugs, aged 20. And then I somehow got myself through uni. Don't ask me how.
Wow.
Um, and then age 23, I was like, right, I've really got to clean up my act here. So I split up with Hell's Angel boyfriend or fiance, and got a real job working in software by that point, 24, age software.
So that's quite that. I mean, software, if you think, I know it's really stereotypical, but think someone that works in software, you kind of think man, grey suit, probably middle-aged, whereas you've kind of gone from a Hell's Angel-ish background to software, which is kind of and what drew you to software?
It was an accident.
Fair enough.
Like accidents. Because at uni, I decided for some reason, no offense to all of the accountants out there, but I decided I wanted to be an accountant. Did my first graduate placement on the graduate training scheme with John Lewis and hated doing accounting.
Right.
John Lewis, fine, but fine accounting, pure accounting, and sitting still for that length of time.
Yeah.
And not talking to anybody was not for me. But somehow I ended up working for a software company that sold financial and distribution systems.
Right. Okay.
So the accounting background came into play in a big way, but it was a different experience where you could be a maverick as I was. And it was great. I traveled all over the place. I traveled throughout Europe, Africa, America.
And you don't think of that if you think software company, again, you either think of the kind of the grey suit people or like Silicon Valley, but I kind of think of people that don't really leave the office. Again, this is just how I do it because it's completely wrong, obviously.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have necessarily thought like opportunities to travel and all that side of things.
Oh, I loved it. I mean, when I first started, every time one of the managers would come in and say, "Does anybody want to go?" And before they'd even finish the sentence, I'd be like, "Me."
I love that.
By the end of 6 years, I was like, "Oh, do I have to?"
You wore yourself out.
You end up living out with a suitcase, and you'd go into the office, and you might be in Malta on Monday. I don't know, Boston Wednesday. It was literally all over the place. But in the arena of where I got sent, I ended up in Sierra Leone, that well-known tourist destination in West Africa.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, that well-known tourist destination.
yeah, this was 1997, and this is when the military coup was on, and it was
Wow.
so dangerous there were no direct flights. You from the UK, you had to go via Gambia or Ghana. Um, but it still
Wow.
wasn't clicking in me that this wasn't probably the best idea.
But you just cracked on. You thought, yeah.
It was the classic of me, can I do it?
Oh, wow.
um, and yeah, I got there, and it was mind blowing. It was mind blowing the level of poverty. Um, I I ended up with five soldiers that kind of befriended me and unofficially looked after me. It wasn't their job, but
I mean, thank
they
goodness.
yeah, they kind of took me under their wing. But as part of my education, they took me to a warehouse in Freetown, and I walked into the warehouse, and it was full of kids with no toys, nothing, and not really any sleeping arrangements. And it's where the rebels had gone through the villages throughout Sierra Leone, killed and raped the mums, chopped limbs off, and these were the orphans.
Oh my gosh.
And it was mind blowing. So
Gosh.
uh, yeah, I can't even begin to explain how bad the situation was out there.
I think that's the thing, because we all look at these things from our own kind of worldview, and
Yeah.
I've never been anywhere like that. So in my head, I've got a picture, but I can just imagine it's so much more horrific. Because yeah, I'm thinking of like British warehouses, and it's obviously not the same. My
No.
gosh, and I mean that's just again, I think in the UK we're very shielded. We see things that happen on the news or on a written report, but that really doesn't make it real.
No. No.
Gosh.
And a lot of the time, you don't want to see it because it's so painful and because we are kind of fairly helpless in what we can do.
Hmm.
It's kind of like, I guess, the British thing to say, I don't want to know too much.
Yeah. No, that's I don't think that's unfair actually at all.
And it's not a criticism of people. It's just because how do you deal with it? How do you process it? Um, so I was working in the Treasury building in Freetown and working directly with the accountant general. A guy runs in one day and he says to the accountant general, I need an advance on my salary. And the accountant general said, what's it for? He said, my wife's been shot by the rebels, and I need $200 or she dies, because there's no NHS or anything else.
So that was to take her to hospital and help her in that way.
Yeah.
Gosh.
And the accountant general said, I'm sorry, we passed a policy last week that there is no advance on salaries. And the guy was like, but my wife is dying. She's been shot. And the accountant general said, well, come back tomorrow morning and I'll see what I can do. And the guy just ran out in tears saying, she'll be dead by then. And if I'd have had $200 on me at the time, I would have just said, have it,
Yeah, yeah.
because that's the price of a life. And yeah, we don't experience anything like that here. We knock the NHS, we knock our circumstances, but we are so privileged.
Yeah, I mean, it's a different animal, isn't it? If you've been shot or injured, you can go to the NHS and you will be fixed.
Yeah.
Yes, we know waiting times aren't great, but actually they're always kind of prioritizing who comes in, and yes, it's annoying if you go in with something on the more minor scale, but I mean, I've got a family member who's having cancer treatment at the moment, and I have to say they have been so good, like
Mm.
so on it.
Mm.
The speed at which they've seen him done things, scans, treatments has been just mind blowing. So I know we do not the NHS. I know it is really annoying if you're trying to get an appointment for something, but when
I
you see things like you have, I mean, I can't even imagine.
I realise this is massive oversharing.
It's all right. I love it.
But 2022, I was diagnosed with breast cancer, had a double mastectomy. But when I was seeing the surgeon, who was brilliant, and the whole treatment was brilliant, but I was seeing the surgeon because I'd seen all of those horrific pictures on Instagram and everything else of what you look like after a mastectomy. So I said to the surgeon, will I be able to get tattoos afterwards? And he looked at me, he goes, what do you want tattoos for? And I said, so I don't look like I've got no nipples or anything, it's just for me. And he says, I'm not taking your nipples. We care about what our patients are dealing with afterwards.
Yeah.
He said, we want you to have as much as anybody that hasn't gone through cancer treatment. So they literally cookie cutted them out and stitched them back in.
Really?
Yeah. As I said, oversharing. But
I didn't know that, actually.
And so many people that I speak to now don't know that and don't know that that is an option with the surgeons that they end up with. And sometimes it's not. If your cancer is too close to your nipples, then they can't. Yeah. But again, it's by sharing that information, hence why I'm sharing it with you.
No, it's all good to share.
Yeah, that people become aware of it. Yeah.
Gosh. So obviously your experience in Sierra Leone was huge.
Yeah.
And that did lead on to a different business, didn't it?
Yeah. So that was 1997, 1998. I went back out, not to Sierra Leone this time, went to the Gambia and met them there.
Okay.
It was a little bit safer. But I was determined to do something about it, but I didn't know how at the time. I didn't know what I could do because it was clear that none of the aid we were giving as the European Union or whatever was getting to the people that needed it. So I needed some processing time. Fast forward to the year 2000, had a routine appendix operation, went very wrong, lost 4 years of my life. I couldn't walk further than the bathroom. I had 9 months in bed where I literally could walk to the bathroom and that was it. So yeah, it took me 4 years to get to a point where I could work at least part-time.
Wow.
So that was 2000 to 2004. And then 2004, I got like a simple part-time job just to build my strength up because I hadn't worked for so long. And it took me until about 2006. I was like, right, I'm going to go back to my original idea of fair trade jewellery, but designed in the UK for the UK market, made in third world countries. So that's how it came about. And at the time, I still wasn't really well enough to work full time. And I thought I could run it as a lifestyle business. Got to the packaging. It was my sister that said, well, what are you going to put the jewellery in? You can't put it in like Chinese plastic. It doesn't.
Yeah.
Ethos doesn't match. It wasn't a criticism. It was just,
doesn't align.
Yeah, it doesn't align. So I was like, okay, fair point, and tried to find boxes and couldn't. Everywhere I wanted a minimum of 1,000 units, 10 to 12 week lead time. Me coming from software where you have service level agreements and you've got to respond within the hour or whatever, I was getting quotes in the post.
No.
This is 2006, 2007. I'm like, I'm going to get a quote. We've sent it to you in the post. It'll be with you like 12 days later.
Oh my gosh.
So that's why we were such a disruptive brand, because it was like, okay, we'll scrap all these 1,000 units. You can buy online now and have it tomorrow.
Yeah. And you can also buy like 3 if you want.
Yeah.
Which is particularly for small businesses. When you started out in your business, obviously we all want our businesses to be successful, but actually having a huge cost for packaging could make the business not successful because, whereas if you can do it bit by bit, then you can build and tweak and adjust and grow, which is far better for small business anyway.
Yeah. And then there's all sorts of other markets that I hadn't even considered at the time. Somebody like ASOS, they might open the packaging and find a load of it is damaged or water damage or misprinting. We saw a brilliant one recently. I won't name the brand. I won't name and shame them, but all their packaging arrived with Japanese language on it instead of British.
Awkward. Awkward. Oh dear.
So being able to get hold of packaging really quickly and a substitute, there's actually a whole market for it.
And so really you found the Tiny Box Company almost by accident, because it was a need that
Yep.
it was a need and it just wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
And that has, what happened to the jewelry side of it?
So we went on Dragon's Den in 2008, got investment from two of the dragons, and never told them that I wasn't well enough to work full time. Just kind
No, don't want to do that.
And as part of the agreement, I wasn't allowed to work on any other company.
Right.
As part of the investment in order to protect their investment. That has now been relinquished. We're still shareholders and partners, but because Tiny Box has proven itself and is a success, that restriction contract has been lifted.
Okay.
So I am planning to go back to the original concept, but in a slightly different way. What I'm aiming to do is micro loans to women in third world to.
I've heard about these, and that helps them to get their own business up and running, doesn't it?
Exactly so. Yeah. So
I mean, what was it like on Dragon's Den and getting that investment? Because we do hear about investment a lot, and obviously Dragon's Den is the most public forum for this. There's a shockingly small number of women that get investment in business. I was reading about this the other day. I feel like it was 2%. It was really small. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
1.8p, 1.8 pence in the pound goes to female-led businesses and venture capital.
You see that? So it's not even 2%. It's not even 2%. So investment is hard. Dragon's Den is hard. What was that like?
So just going back to the 1.8p in the pound, pre-COVID it was 3.
Oh, really? So COVID's had a really detrimental impact on that.
It's gone the wrong way.
I mean, it wasn't massive to start with, let's be honest. 3 is pretty rubbish anyway, but
to be fair, you can't put all of the blame on the venture capitalists. Women don't ask for it.
Yeah.
So that's half the problem. It's the confidence and everything else. But going back to your question of Dragon's Den, I never applied to go on, and I would never have applied to go on, again, through lack of confidence, imposter syndrome. It was my business partner that applied, didn't tell me.
Brilliant. I love all this.
So I had no idea. I get a phone call from the BBC saying, "We've got your application. Do you want to come on?" And I'm like, like, what do you want the money for? And my business partner at the time was in the office that day, and he was just going, "Blag it, just make it up."
Excellent.
So somehow we ended up on the show, and I gotta say, I was pretty blasé about it because I thought we had no chance.
Maybe this is a secret way to be.
Well, because I'd had no plans to go on the show, we had nothing patentable, no trading history. I knew nothing about packaging. My business partner knew nothing about packaging. We really had nothing going for us. So my only aim was to get a small window where I didn't look like an idiot.
Fair enough. And it's brilliant promotion for a business, regardless of whether you get the investment or not. It is a huge opportunity, isn't it?
So long as you don't look like an idiot.
Yeah, that is.
And you know that they kind of pick certain character types to fill the ones that do look pretty stupid. So yeah, no expectations, but you walk in and it is literally as it appears on the TV, where you're just met with these 5 stony faces. And I kind of went in like, "Hi, hello, how are you?" Nothing.
Oh God, it's like when you start giving a talk and you crack a joke and there's nothing and you think, oh no.
That's exactly what it was like. And Robin Banks, who was my business partner, he was a well-known broadcaster at the time. And before we'd gone on, he said to me, "It's really important you stay calm, Rachel, because they'll hear it in your voice if you've got any nerves or anything." If you look at the clip of us on Dragon's Den, the first clip you see is me turning around with a puzzled look while Robin's going,
"Oh God." So he's hyperventilating and you're cool as a cucumber going, "What are you doing?" Oh gosh.
And I genuinely think two of the dragons felt sorry for me. I can't think of any other reason why they would have invested because, as I say, I didn't know anything about the packaging market, no trading history.
So remind us which dragons you got.
Peter Jones and Theo Paphitis.
Well, I mean, I know you've been doing things with Theo
Yeah.
fairly recently, haven't you? Did you do
Yeah.
was it the Invest panel you were part of?
SBS Invest. Yeah, I still.
SBS Invest. Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's worked out well for them all, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's lovely to see. I knew it was Theo, but I'd completely forgotten it was Peter Jones as well. But so were you just quite shocked when they said, yes, we're in?
Oh, completely. The BBC, the crew off camera afterwards said, "You don't look very pleased." And I'm like, well, that wasn't supposed to happen.
I mean, what did having, because I think when you with the dragons and with investors generally, it's not just the money, is it? It's all that expertise that, and also those connections, because they can kind of get their foot in a door, which you can. I mean, I don't believe that it's only, you know, who knows who, because you can get to know everybody with enough time, but it does expedite the process, doesn't it?
So what the dragons tend to do is they agree with you on the outset how much help they're going to give you and what the rules of the game are effectively. So I had a meeting with them about 2 months after the filming, and in I walked to find 12 of them, brand strategists, pricing analysts,
Wow.
and little me. And they dissected the business for a couple of hours and asked me about the suppliers, customers, the strategies we were applying, the growth strategy and everything. And at the end of the meeting, Theo's right-hand man, Kipros, just said, "Do you know what? We're just going to forward you the money and leave you to run the business. You don't need us."
That's lovely. I mean, kind of terrifying because you've got these amazing dragons, but a huge compliment.
Oh, I was gutted.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because I'd wanted to be mentored.
Yeah.
And I didn't have the confidence. And yet what they were saying was, "We'll just go and get on with it. You know what you're doing. You know better than us what you're doing." So in that market. So
Go get them.
go get them. Yeah.
We mentioned before we started, well, it was recording, but before we started, confidence, and particularly in women, actually, in business. We talked about the percentage of the pound that goes to women from an investment point of view. You were saying about the percentage of women managers. We look at women in C-suite. I was asked to comment for a story the other day about whether a particular AI system was sexist, because they'd asked the question, show me pictures of a CEO, and the service, the system had generated pictures of men. And they said to me, well, is that's sexist? And I said, no, it's not. I said, Google how many CEOs are women, look at the percentage it says, and now think about whether what it's shown you is an accurate reflection of real life. And it was. So it's not sexist, it's tragic and we need to address it, but it's actually reflecting real life. So we need to really question the foundations of where it's, not the actual pictures or whatever it's shown us. Why do you think it's such an issue, the confidence, the pushing ourselves forward?
I think that there is so much unconscious bias. I don't think it's anyone's fault. I think it's just the way humans have historically developed, if you like. And the playing field has changed massively. When, years ago, when it was about physical strength, yes, men were stronger. Women had a different role. It wasn't a lower role, it was just a different role. And I think that men, as part of their education, as part of everything around them, are fed these subliminal messaging all the time. So let's go back to COVID. And can you tell me one campaign around COVID that used a female voice? All of the campaigns, you must stay home, all
Men,
of them
weren't they?
were male voices. So authority is still associated with men. And that's what both women and men and our kids are hearing. So of course that's going to reflect and carry on reflecting it in our lives. I'm part of a movement called By Women Built, as in
Love
purchased by Women
that.
Built. Yeah. Set up
Awesome.
by Sahar, that used to own Coffee Republic, an amazing woman. I think there's about 1,400 brands now that are part of it. And
Wow.
Ocado recently set up a shopping aisle of brands owned by female-led.
That was awesome.
Female-led. Yeah.
I love that. It's a weird one though, because I did write a bit about this, which was should we have that? No, we shouldn't, because it shouldn't be needed, but it is.
So there was actually a backlash on LinkedIn.
No.
Yes. And the first person to comment on the backlash or to create the backlash was a woman.
No, oh God, it definitely wasn't my post, because my post
No.
was it shouldn't be needed, but
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
Wow. So what? Explore that point. I'm mystified.
The point that the female was making was it's about the product. It's not about whether it's a female or male. And yes, of course it is in an ideal world. But the thing is that the supermarkets go by what they sell is largely consumer driven. And if consumers don't know about the smaller brands because women never seem to get the chance in the same way, then you're caught in this vicious
Completely.
circle.
And also, if the product isn't good, I interviewed Amy from Hunter and Gather a little while ago, and she sent me a jar of their avocado mayonnaise.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, that stuff's amazing.
Yeah.
But I didn't know it existed. And actually, if I'm in the supermarket looking for mayonnaise, I'm looking on the shelves, I'll probably go for one of the obvious brands because that's what you know.
Yeah.
But you don't really have the chance to see what else is available. But the thing is that the product won't be successful if it's rubbish, but it's getting people to say this is another option, which is what I
Yeah.
think the whole point of the campaign was, surely.
Yeah. Yeah, it was.
Wow. And when you're up against opposition from the same sex as you, that's an interesting point.
Mm.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think we've still got a bit of a way to go to level out the playing field. But the way it's going to change is by women just doing it and and just creating that change, which then makes it easier for other women to follow.
Yeah.
But if you ask most 18-year-olds, name me a female entrepreneur, they can't.
No.
Lots of people say Karen Brady. Technically, Karen Brady isn't an entrepreneur. She's a very successful businesswoman.
Yes, she was involved with, oh God, a football club.
She was. And then obviously on The Apprentice.
Yeah.
She's been a very successful businesswoman, not knocking her at all. But as I say, not technically a female entrepreneur. So most people can't name one.
No. There was an ad campaign. Again, I've talked about this somewhere very recently. It was a few years ago where it says picture a CEO, picture someone crying in the corner, picture a nurse. Is it a woman? Is it a man? Is it that general stereotype? And it was actually, I find it quite shocking because when I did the thing, I thought of the obvious each time, and I thought, no, that's not cool. That's not okay. Not necessarily criticism of my thought process, but a criticism of maybe the subliminal messages. Maybe when we see ads talking about the NHS or talking about nurses, it's always a woman. Maybe when we see ads or we read articles about CEOs, they're always men. It is it's like turning around a tanker though, isn't it? It's not going to be done overnight because there's been so many years of it being one way.
Yeah, it has. I'm just incredibly fortunate that with my husband, it's almost like role reversal.
Yeah.
So he cooks every night. I can't cook.
I love that. I love that.
He packs my lunch. He makes sure I get to work.
Oh, he sounds brilliant. He sounds awesome.
He is absolutely brilliant because in his head, he doesn't care whether people are male, female, or whatever. It's about how good they are at what they do and what they stand for.
Completely. No, we've all got different skills. When people say, "Oh, women can be like builders," I know that's such a thing, as much as men, and I'm like, In theory, absolutely, but I am not as strong as a man of my height. I'm not that physically strong at all. Like I can walk all day, but I don't lift heavy things. So it is important to like know your skills.
Yeah.
Um, and not just go, oh, well, because I can, because I'm this. Well, you can do anything. But actually, if we play to our strong, what we're good at, then everyone's going to be better off, aren't they?
And I think that that's one of the things that's quite interesting. I'm pretty sure it was Forbes that proved that female-led businesses actually tended to be more profitable purely because the women generally, again, it's a generalization, but women generally care about their employees more and therefore get better results out of them.
And probably greater retention if that's the case, which
Yeah.
is obviously a huge cost for businesses when you have to train up new people all the time and do all of that.
But a good friend of ours recently, well, I say recently, last year, 2 years ago, was trying to get VC funding. And she phoned me up one night and she said, Rach, I've cracked it. I've cracked it. She hadn't got anywhere for a year.
Wow.
Um, and very successful business. You know, it wouldn't surprise me if it was like the next Amazon in a few years.
Wow. So
You
really
know,
good, exciting business.
really good, exciting business. But yeah, she phones me up. I've cracked it. And I'm like, what did you do? She said, I sent the deck from my husband's LinkedIn account.
I mean, that makes me sad.
It worked.
But this is the thing. Sometimes you do have to do like the Ocado thing. You have to do the big bold thing to get
Mm.
where you want to go. But so it was all her work, but because it was a man's name, it changed the game.
Yeah.
What can we do about this? What can we all, anyone listening, because it is like turning a tanker. What can we do about the situation?
So I think most men, there's always exceptions. There's exceptions in both women and men, but most men don't want it to be like that at all,
No.
but they're not aware of it. So I had a meeting with a very successful male entrepreneur last week about a completely different business. Really nice guy. And we were talking about a new venture, and he's kind of said to me, "Why would you want me on board?" And I said, "Do you know what? I've done it myself, but actually, I would rather share the load." I said, "And you know, being honest, you'll make investment way easier."
Yeah.
And he looked at me and he was like, "What?" So I told him, and he was so shocked. And he said, "Well, why have I never seen this?" And I said, "Because you're a man and you're a very successful man. So why would it cross your radar?"
Yeah, that's a really important point. It's not this what we've been talking about is not against men
No,
whatsoever.
no.
But why would they be? I'm not aware of loads of things that happen that aren't in my field of vision.
Mm.
And it's the same, isn't it?
But the same way as we will never experience as women what an awful lot of men have to struggle with, which is the bravado and the male not show any emotions. You know, you've got to be the hard, tough one kind of thing. I mean, that must be equally just as difficult to manage.
Completely. I mean, they've had to quite rightly do big campaigns around male mental health and talking about when you are in a situation when you need help because, as you say, men are like, no, pull yourself together. What are you doing, you wimp? That's so not okay.
Yeah. My stepson often wears a hoodie now saying, uh, boys get sad too, or something like that, to
Yeah.
help create the conversations and to help, again, address that sexual balance that,
Yeah.
um, or the subliminal messaging again that we have of what each sex should be, if you like.
Completely. So part of this, I guess, is in terms of how we fix it. I mean, you mentioned it before. It's just doing the things, isn't it? It's just swallow it almost if it helps to say, actually, I'm doing this not just for me, but for everybody.
Yeah. So I work in a really male dominated environment because it's packaging, it's distribution, it's manufacturing. Um, and I've had so many comments about being a woman and everything. And And you know what? It doesn't upset me because I know that I'm doing it and I know that I'm setting a good example for other women around me, that we just need to open the boundaries, if you like,
Mm-hmm.
and reset the ceilings that we perceive are there.
Have you found with the Tiny Box Company, being a woman at the helm has been challenging?
Yeah. But a lot of the challenging has been me, or
Okay.
my, how do I word it? So when I met the male entrepreneur last week, and we were talking about venture capital and things like that, and I said, um, if we raise 2 million, should we expect to give away 40%? And he was like, no, absolutely not. We're worth way more than that. Um, and and it really hit home to me that me leading the business in lots of ways hasn't been great because I haven't had that bullishness.
So you, because you really want the investment and you know that this how the situation is for women, you're like, actually, if I give you more of the percentage, I'm more likely to get that investment. Whereas he's just going, well, no, we're worth more. I'm not going
Yeah,
that way.
exactly. But then you apply that to everything. You apply that to supplier pricing, and you don't haggle as much because you don't want to upset people. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And it filters in every way. And I think men in general are probably better at looking after employees for the good of the whole. Whereas I know that one of my downfalls is that I'll feel sorry for a particular employee or sad, or I want to be kind to them at the detriment of the company and the overall organism.
But then empathy is such an important aspect, isn't it? And although
Yeah.
you've got however many people you employ, not everybody is in that same situation. Not everyone is having a tricky time.
But
It's a balance.
it makes me a terrible entrepreneur in lots of ways because I'll put the needs of a couple of people before everybody else.
But then does it make you a much better person?
Does that count in business?
I think it counts in life.
Hmm. But that goes on to how we measure success as a culture.
That is a really good point, actually. And if success is purely a number on a balance sheet, or if it is having a happy team, feeling you're making a difference, doing positive things, like when you're talking about the microloans for third world countries, realistically, that's not going to make you incredibly wealthy because that's not why you're doing it.
No.
But actually, you're doing a good thing. Are you
Mm.
helping people? Well, hugely.
Mm. But we don't say, oh, look at that person. They're so successful because they've helped 10,000 people. Do you know
No,
what I
you
mean?
don't. You say, look at that person. They're driving a really, really nice car, which has cost a fortune. You do look at those external points, don't you? Like I was like, always look at jewelry. I'm like, oh, that's pretty, or the car, or the things like that, because that's how we assume success is monetary based.
Yeah. Mm.
Do you think it's important to know what your personal definition of success is?
I think that in the whole world of social media, we are being missold,
Okay.
and that success should be whatever makes you happy. If you want to be a stay-at-home mum and look after your kids to the best of your ability, and that's your idea of success, then you should absolutely be allowed the space to do that.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to run a side hustle whilst you bring up your kids or whatever, then again, you should be given the space to do that. But for society now sells the dream that everybody that is successful has got to be a huge influencer, uh, with millions of followers that can afford their Gucci handbag and everything else. And what is missing from all of that is we know that it doesn't necessarily make you happy.
Do you think that might actually contribute towards the confidence issue as well?
I'm absolutely sure that it does because if you look at us as tribal people, going back, I don't know, 1,000 years or whatever, we had to be accepted by the tribe not to be outcast. And if we were outcast, we would die. We just wouldn't survive on our own.
Mm-hmm.
It was safety in numbers. So it's built into us to accept authority, and to need to be liked by the tribe. But now the tribe is 8 billion.
Yeah.
And you can't be liked by the new tribe. And yet the way that social media is designed is for those dopamine hits of those likes. And what happens is you'll get a dopamine hit and then you won't get likes. So your dopamine crash will be higher or lower than your original dopamine high. So you end up in dopamine deficit. And of course, that's going to have a knock-on effect with our confidence.
God, we're humans are weird, aren't they? Like I've got animals and they don't have any of this to deal with. They just crack on with their lives. They don't worry about, obviously they're not necessarily going out and being successful in their own right, but it's just our lives are actually so complicated now, aren't they? There's so many things you think about, even if you don't want to think about it. Even if I don't care about social media, you do. You put something on and you want people to engage with it. You don't put something on to get like nothing.
No.
You want to make an impact, but what if you don't know if you're making that impact? There's so many questions, and then that does knock your confidence. Even just posting again, let alone going out there, something you were confident on before, you put the post out, it hasn't done very well. That doesn't just knock your confidence in the post or the platform. It can actually have much deeper effects, can't it?
Yes, it can. And you've only got to look at the mental health situation of the youngsters coming through. Social services, the NHS, overwhelmed with mental health issues, because by us all striving for what we believe is to be the perfect life, we're killing the very things that we need. We know that humans can't function without a strong sense of community, that loneliness is one of the biggest killers. It creates so much stress. So everything we need, we're pushing away for this dream lifestyle that then doesn't help us in any way and actually makes us suffer more.
And it's not necessarily true either. You see someone posting a picture of them sort of lolling across the front of their Bentley. Might not even be their Bentley.
Oh, I know.
It's all done to show something. So you're then measuring yourself up to a completely fake situation.
Yeah, it is a big problem. I've been doing a lot of research about it for my next business venture.
I know I can't ask you about that, but it sounds like something that's much needed, put it that way.
All I can say is an alternative to dating apps.
Ooh.
Hence why I've been looking so much at the dopamine deficit and
See.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, what is next for you? Because you're still very much involved with Tiny Box Company, aren't you?
I am, yeah. So I've got a new CEO. So I'm working purely on special projects.
Is that weird? Because obviously it's been your
great.
baby. You've grown it from nothing. You enjoy it. You enjoy the special projects.
Yeah, because I was really getting bogged down with the day to day. When you hear the same old problems, without doubt, the biggest issue for small businesses or medium-sized businesses like us is staff. And I was running out of patience.
Yeah.
So now I can just focus on the areas where I know I can strategically add value, and allow someone much better than me to deal with the day-to-day.
And that also frees you up time to do different projects that aren't connected to the Tiny Box Company.
Yeah. Like my new dating app.
And I guess things like SBS Invest, the microloans element, all these other things that really fire you up and you're excited about.
Yeah, I'm in a massively privileged position where I can kind of pick and choose what I want to get involved in. Yeah, I am incredibly lucky. We have a very lovely lifestyle.
But is it luck, or did you just work really, really hard?
So I worked really, really hard, but I think what people underestimate is that if you don't have the right genetics, if you don't have the right brain power, if you don't have all of the components that you need psychologically, it's never going to happen to you. If you look at the top footballers, the ones that really make it, they've got the whole package. They've got the humility to listen to their technique. They've got to have the physical ability. They've got to have the mental capacity. It's not just about being able to kick a football. And with running a business, successful business, it's the same. You've got to have every element. And if you were born without great mental processing, or if you were born to be a real perfectionist where you have to see every little detail through, you're coming from a real back foot.
But would you say that you can improve those things as well? You can learn.
Yeah, without doubt. We know from neuroplasticity that you can change your neural pathways, but
It's still harder. I understand
a
what you're
lot
saying.
harder. It's a lot harder. You know, if you look at going back to men, and this isn't male bashing. This is about men for men. The most successful men are taller. Simple as that. You have more chance to be more successful if you're taller. So
Interesting.
So if you're 5'5" and your boss is 6'7", you are going to have to work that much harder to gain his spot when he retires.
There was a book as well. Oh, I can't remember the name. I'll explain the situation. It's a really well-known book, but I've forgotten it. About someone did a study about ice hockey players. And if they're born in the first part of the year, they're more likely to be successful.
That was Malcolm Gladwell, and it was
Was it Tipping Point?
no, it was Underliers,
Outliers.
Outliers. That's
Yeah,
it.
Tipping Point's that show on Channel 3, isn't it? Where they have the Queens and Ben Shepherd.
There's a book called Tipping Point as well, and he may have written. I don't know. There is a book
Let's
called Tipping
pretend.
Point. But the hockey players was in Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers.
But again, that's you can't influence when you're born.
No.
So I see what you mean. I do understand what you're saying. But I do think that, again, I think women particularly always lucky. It's a lucky break. And you look back at what they've done and you think, well, okay, that went well and that went well. But actually, you did put in so much graft to get there.
Yeah. I've worked hard. I have worked hard. But I mean, I know it's spread around so much at the moment. Without doubt, I have ADHD. But as part of that, I have the ability to super focus.
Yeah, I've heard about the hyper focusing.
Yeah. So I can hyper focus on a particular task. And where normally I can't sit still, if I get my head in a task, I can stay there for like 16 hours, not moving. Obviously, I need to go for a wee, but
But beyond that, so do you almost see it a bit like a superpower? Because
yeah.
that's quite a good thing to be able to do if you've got that really deep work you need to do.
Yeah. And I don't know where it comes from. I have this hidden steel drive where I've got to get something done. And again, it's not something I don't think it's something I've created. I think it's something in me. So again, it comes back to luck. If you have that in you, the journey's easier.
But interestingly, on paper, if someone had said, right, this is how this person's life started, do you think they ended up being really successful or not? You wouldn't necessarily think that somebody in that situation that was taken into care would be, would you?
No, I did kind of break the mold on that a bit.
I love that though.
And interestingly, so I never knew this until, so I started Tiny Box in 2007, 2008, 2007. And I found out in 2017, so yeah, 10 years later, that my great grandfather had a packaging company in London in the 1900s
Oh, wow.
that was run by my great grandmother as well.
That's mad, isn't it?
It is, isn't it?
It's mad.
So I never knew. And then my dad just dropped it into conversation one day. I was
All
like,
right.
oh, now you tell me. So I went on to Ancestry, and yeah, they were printers, paper bag manufacturers. And then the business got into trouble in 1914, at the start of World War One, because they didn't have any men to operate the machinery, and they couldn't get the paper supplies.
Ah, God, that's really interesting.
It's mad, isn't it?
Mad. So,
So,
full circle.
so is it genetic?
Almost that ability to sort of see things and how you deal with it. It is interesting, isn't it? What we kind of breed in, what's nature versus nurture. Well, before I let you go, is there anything else you would like to share or add? Any kind of calls for action for people who want to go and do things that are perhaps needing that kick up the backside or feel that they can't?
So I was reading about Elon Musk a while back. Now, love him or hate him, he's an interesting character, but he hits home on something which did make me question. So there's been a lot of speculation about manifestation and whether there's any truth in it, whether you can manifest your dreams or whatever. But Elon Musk said, what about if we're in a video game? And everything that we do is like in a virtual reality, because there's lots to suggest that it is. So my question is, if that's the case, would you play the game different? Because if you
God, that's deep.
if you are just a virtual character in a virtual world, then suddenly all of our ridiculousness of beating ourselves up and all of our insecurities and everything become what they actually are, i.e. ridiculous. Why? They're not serving any purpose whatsoever.
No, and also when you play a video game, like you take risks because you can just
Yeah.
start again.
Yeah. But you
Gosh.
can in life as well.
You can, but we forget that. We
Yeah.
completely forget that. But that's going to give me a lot of feed for thought this afternoon, which I didn't expect.
It's deep, but as I say, if you can see you as a character in a game, so you are then writing your own story rather than allowing your story to be written for you,
Mm-hmm.
and you gain control, then you're playing a different game.
Yeah, it literally changes everything, doesn't it? Well, on that note, can you tell us all the places where we can find you online?
So tinyboxcompany.com is the main website. You can also find me on rachelwatkin.com. On there, if anyone's struggling with their business or having issues, we offer free clinics. They're like doctor's surgery clinics.
Amazing.
That anybody can just email in and ask for a session. We promise we won't try and sell you anything because I don't do clinics for money. And yeah, you can follow us on Instagram at Tinybox Company or at Rachel Watkyn OBE.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today. I've absolutely loved our chat. I could literally talk to you all day. But thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been great.